Let's do it. Nice.
Hello.
What up, man?
You look like you're sweating because you're ready to chew someone's face off.
I don't think I'm sweating.
A little bit.
I might have a little bit of a gleam or something on me.
We were watching Cops earlier.
Yeah.
Nice.
That's right.
So,
And you know when my glasses come on, we mean business.
I mean,
come on,
people better
son.
buckle up because we're going full nerd alert today, boys and girls.
Yes. Yeah. How dare you not be inclusive like that?
So, we got a few things we're going to talk about. We got some pure jiu-jitsu stuff. We got just a very quick answer to a TRT question that we asked people to bring in our hormones and TRT stuff.
Totally.
This one's a real simple one. We don't have to wait for Carrie.
Yeah.
We'll touch on that at the end. And then potentially, if we have time, there's a kind of a deep question on not spine preventative maintenance like we did last episode.
A bad neck injury.
But a really bad neck injury,
Yeah.
which we might get to today. We'll at least touch on it. But more importantly, the meat and potatoes of today's episode.
Yes.
There is a very viral post that has gone around, and I'll read the title of it because I'm sure a lot of people have actually seen.
Oh, yeah, and it's been talked about in the whatever, you know, the on YouTube.
The ethos of the internet. And
yeah, go ahead.
Pretty much what most people are doing is reading the headline and then running with it.
That's right.
And the headline is 8-hour time-restricted eating linked to a 91% higher risk of cardiovascular death, American Heart Association has said.
Okay, so if you just want the short version, it's complete bullshit.
Oh.
Then you guys you're done now.
Okay.
No. So for those of you tuning in, you're like, why are they talking about this on a jiu-jitsu podcast? Because it's not just a jiu-jitsu podcast, right?
Yep.
So one of the missions of what we're doing here is to try to bring health and wellness principles and get people kind of, start building white belt, blue belt level, purple belt level, and understanding, metaphorically, and understanding some health and nutrition for themselves, because, especially for our community, because I will say this, in all due respect, there's a lot of bro science going on, okay? And I want you, if you have your mom or your dad or someone that comes to you, oh, did you see about this? You got to stop that time-restricted eating or intermittent fasting. It's going to give you a heart attack. I want you guys to have some tools here, okay? So,
and we do know that, Sean Baker,
Yep.
Metabolic Mike, he's a popular guy. A couple of these prominent people that are in the community that have good opinions on stuff have addressed this.
Yep.
But for our community, we wanted to be able to dig into it ourselves.
Yeah, and I have a couple other points that I don't think I've heard quite a bit about that might be helpful. Now, apologize ahead of time, and I know you guys are going to make fun of me, but I'm going to read a portion of my book, my own book. It's kind of douchey.
Hey!
To do that, but I'm making a point here.
Right.
Okay, so just to give you guys a background, Strong Medicine was published, it was a comprehensive 600-page wellness book, published in 2015. Okay, I did most of the writing for it between 2012 2014. So we're talking about over 10 years ago. And this is what I wrote about issues with, now this is back then, over 10 years ago, issues with current nutritional science. So bear with me as I read this. Yep. I said, unfortunately, when you peel back the layers to find the underlying basis for current nutritional recommendations, the basic principles on which they are founded, you find yourself in a sketchy place far from solid, unbiased science. Surely the dietary guidelines from our government are based on the latest and greatest cutting-edge science, right? There are 4 major problems with modern nutritional research and practice. Okay, I'm going to go over a couple of them here. The number one I talk about is first principles. Said, one major problem is that current nutritional science has no underlying guiding principles as its foundation. So physics, chemistry, biology, and geology all have universal principles such as mathematics, relativity, quantum theory, and the periodic table of elements as foundations. In the sciences, these foundations are the basis for formulating and testing theories through design and performance of experiments. We refer to these principles as first principles in this book. After reading through countless journal articles on nutritional research, the underlying first principles from which to test theory and perform research seem to be largely absent. One would think that foundational disciplines of physiology, biochemistry, and even anthropology would be very useful in informing nutritional theory and clinical practice, but they are often ignored. When we actually peeled the layers of the onion back even more, we found that modern, quote-unquote, official nutrition recommendations by professional medical organizations and government agencies sometimes contradict the basic scientific principles which they should be based. Okay. Here's the big crux of what I'm going to talk about and relates to today's kind of discussion. So the second problem is study design. And I'm quoting from the book now. Most nutritional research involves quote unquote observational data, which really boils down to study participants reporting what they eat to researchers on questionnaires. Okay. How many of us are truly honest about what we really eat when asked, especially by a researcher, or can even recall what we ate weeks and months ago? Do the questionnaires allow for differences in food quality in research? For example, does red meat from grass-fed cow have the same biochemical composition, fat profile, and nutritional value as a cow raised in a feedlot or pesticide-laden grains? Does this make a difference when we claim red meat is bad? So, I'm into quote. I've read enough today. But one of the things that I kind of actually, I'm going to take that back because I'm going to read one more thing. Here is what I want to talk about observational studies. This is the last thing I'm going to read. Then we're going to talk about this thing that came out. Okay. Again, I'm quoting. Observational studies can be very useful to generate hypotheses that can later then be tested more rigorously, but one should be very careful in using observational results to make nutritional recommendations. How many contradictory studies have you seen? It seems like every year a study comes out saying eggs are bad, only to have another say eggs are good. These studies are based on observational data, so the associations need to be tested. So good first test for observational study. So in other words, I'm not quoting anymore, but so when you see these observational papers, and I'll talk about what that is in a second, a good thing you should think about is what are the proposed physiological and biochemical mechanisms that underlie these findings, if any? Second, do the findings make sense from what we know about molecular biology or biochemistry? But again, observational studies don't answer any of that stuff. So I'm officially done quoting that book now. What my point is, this was a problem back then. Nothing has changed. These scientists continue to make careers out of this nonsense, okay? And the news media is becoming more and more complicit for, clickbait, right?
Yeah.
Because they get paid based on clicks, right?
Sure.
So let's talk about this thing. So first of all, this was not even a paper, okay? This is very important. So this was presented at a conference put on by the American Heart Association. It's a poster. So oftentimes researchers will go to these conferences and present preliminary data they've collected from a research study. They have not submitted this to peer review or publication, okay? For the life of me, I can't understand how this was released as a, someone decided to be a good idea to release this as a newsworthy item, and then the media did what they always do. Right. Okay. So they said 91%. Yep. So what did it say again to you? What when you heard that? What?
Yeah, it was 91%. 8-hour time restriction or restricted eating is linked to 91% higher risk of cardiovascular death.
Okay, so let's talk about the 91%. That's kind of scary, right?
That's huge.
When you hear that.
Yeah.
So again, now we're going to get into a subject called relative risk versus absolute risk. Okay, what the 91% is relative risk. And I want to explain this in a very easy to understand manner. Here's an example that I've seen many times. It's been used over the course of years to illustrate this point. Let's say I'm just making this up, okay? Let's say that the risk of having a blood clot in the general population is 1 out of 1,000. Okay? That is 0.1%, right? That's your risk. That's an absolute risk, okay? Let's say we've collected data in a population. We found that, it's prevalent 1 out of every 1,000 people. We get it. So your risk in the general population is 0.1%. Let's say you have a gene mutation that predisposes you to a higher risk of blood clot. And we find that is those people that have this gene, 8 out of 1,000 will have a blood clot. What's the percentage in that? 0.8. That's an absolute risk. So in other words, both of those are under 1% risk, okay? But let's compare. Let's take the absolute risk of the general population and the absolute risk of this gene mutation group. So 0.1% and 0.8%, very, very low still.
Yeah.
The relative risk is 800%. So the headline could be, if you have this gene, you're 800% more likely to have a blood clot. And people say, oh, 800%. But what is your absolute risk of that? It's still 0.8%.
This sounds oddly familiar to the last 4 years.
Boy, we could have
we won't go
3
down that.
podcasts on this, dude.
I think we have a couple more years till we can go deep on that. But
Dude, I'm real close.
But it sounds oddly familiar.
So again, the media is running with this relative risk number.
Right.
Okay. So, and again, where did they get this data? There is something called NHANES, which is the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey. They basically got thousands of people and had them fill out questionnaires on many aspects of their health. You know, sleep, stress, nutrition, the whole 9 yards. And now it's a data set, okay? And some researchers have made whole careers about just different ways to analyze the NHANES data, which is all questionnaire based, okay?
I mean, that in your community, is that that's not considered quality data? I can't imagine.
No, but again, here, so if we do see a correlation, not causation, let's say we see NHANES data and we see a correlation, it's almost like if we see...
do the meat one.
Here's an even easier one. Let's say that coffee drinkers, they found an association with the more you drink coffee, the more your risk of lung cancer. All right, then we're like, okay, we should probably look into that. Is there something to that? Oh, and then we find out that people that drink coffee are more likely to smoke, right? So smoking is a confounder, right? And we try in observational studies to control for these confounders, and there's statistical ways to do that. However, you can't control for every confounder out there, right?
So these questionnaire studies, they're more so meant to look for these correlation pieces that you can dig deeper into.
And form a hypothesis and then say, hey, does that, like I said earlier when I was quoting my book, does that make sense from what we know about underlying physiology? Does coffee consumption, does that make sense from mechanistically for forming lung cancer?
It's almost giving you a lead to like, okay, let's investigate this more.
Correct.
Okay.
And sometimes it can be valuable.
Sure.
But when we take it and run with it, right, and say, well, then we talk about it in the popular press like it's causal.
Yeah.
Right? That's where we run into problems. That's when people are running around, you got to stop that intermittent fasting. It's going to give you a heart attack. You know, people just read the news, right? So, but it gets worse. So they took that NHANES data and they took 8 years from it, okay? Now...
What do you mean they took 8 years?
8 years of data from a group of people.
Okay. Of these questionnaire style.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, I believe there was like over 12,000, I believe, in this population they took of the questionnaires. They divided the groups into for those of you who don't know, intermittent fasting, time-restricted eating, kind of the same thing. It's however you want to call it. It's like talking about overtraining versus under-recovery, okay? So time-restricted eating is like I will confine my eating to an 8-hour window of the day. Or I'm intermittent fasting until for 16 hours. Right. You see what I'm saying? It's the same thing. There's plenty of studies, really good studies, showing that calorie restriction, which time-restricted eating is part of, can actually have some very beneficial effects metabolically and for heart disease and all kinds of stuff. Anyway, what they did, they divided these 12,000 or so people, I believe that's the number, and they divided them into these 5 groups based on their self-report on when they ate. Okay. It gets worse though, but let's go here for now. So, like the people that they're studying in this, where they came up with this 91% increased risk of heart disease, only out of that 12,000 people, only 414 fit into this less than 8-hour feeding window. Okay. The other groups are 11,800 something, right? Is that the other group they're comparing to. So right away you're having a problem with a very small comparison to a large group. Okay. How did they put these people in these groups? Out of 8 years of survey data, they took 2 days. So, Bill, if you did surveys for me for over a course of 8 years and told me, basically trying to figure out what you did in a day of eating, I'm only going to pick 2 days of that 8 years and then decide that's probably how you ate the entire 8 years.
Okay.
That's what they did.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a huge methodology problem.
Okay. Thousands of days. They're picking
They
2.
took 2 and decided, well, that's what those said, so we're going to put you into that group, saying that 2 days was indicative of what you've done for the entire 8 years.
I had half a rack of brownies last night.
This is what I'm saying. So then you would be in the half a rack of brownie group, even though you may have only done that once in a year.
Okay.
Then saying that's your usual norm. Okay, you see where we're going with this. Okay. So
this is what when you look through this.
it's right there in the damn abstract,
Oh my gosh.
right? And we don't know the detailed methodology because we haven't seen the full paper. So usually when you sit,
because it was just a
it's
piece
an
of a
abstract.
presentation.
Yeah, it was an abstract on a piece of cardboard. All right. And so that's the limited method section they had. That's what we were able to glean from it. So right away, huge problems.
Right.
Okay. So also, do you think anywhere on this questionnaire as we talked about food quality?
No. No.
No. So if you restricted your eating, let's just say that they were right, and which is a big if, which I know they didn't. Let's just say that was a valid way of categorizing people into the eating windows. Okay. And let's say, you could do a 8-hour time restricted eating and all you ate is Twinkies, or you ate a bunch of processed food versus organic vegetables, free range meat. You know what I'm saying?
For sure.
Huge difference,
Yeah.
right, in that. Okay. So can you see we're already having some major problems when we come to this? So what do we know about time-restricted eating, intermittent fasting? So caloric restriction, or especially periods of fasting, if you looked at Walter Longo's work out of California, he does a lot of the fasting research.
Okay.
There are huge metabolic benefits for doing that. We've talked about this on this podcast before, talking about when you do go through fasting periods, you go through autophagy, that self-eating, where we do cellular cleanup.
Yeah.
Can have some kind of nice, if not out longevity, but certainly increase your health span.
Sure.
Right. So very powerful for things like diabetes, and it has when we study this stuff, it actually decreases inflammatory markers. Okay, so right away, what we know about the underlying mechanisms goes in the face of this thing anyway, right? And so then if you want to put on your tinfoil hat a little bit, which I know you like to.
I'm ready.
So American Heart Association, who sponsored all this, I'm not going to read anything necessarily nefarious into it. However, their credibility is dubious at best. They regularly are known to have sponsored by drug companies. Do you know that that heart healthy check that you see on cereal?
I've seen it.
Each food corporation has to pay a American Heart Association for each product to be evaluated for their certification. So there's there's a lot of conflicts of interest here. The AHA is not someone that I go to for nutrition advice. And it goes back to what I wrote in the book earlier, that you would think that these organizations would have good stuff.
Are they the ones that put out the food pyramid?
No, they're not.
Okay.
They put out their own dietary guidelines type of things. So, okay, and they're suspect at best. And matter of fact, most of them, I think if you want to get sickly and fat, you should probably follow their guidelines.
Okay.
Historically.
Sure.
Right. That goes back to the old food pyramids with the U.S. Department of Agriculture and all that stuff, which, that's not a conflict of interest.
Right.
Yeah, so this was, and I don't even blame the researchers, okay? They're doing this BS nutrition research with observational data. from what I can tell, the methodology is already poor, and we haven't even looked at the actual paper. And I'm sure if I was a peer reviewer getting this across, I would just rip it to shreds, right? But unfortunately, things we've seen more and more, papers are getting by the peer review process that are garbage.
Really?
And then some good papers are getting through the peer review process, and then the people that own the publishing company, for political reasons, are forcing them to be retracted. Oof. For other things like Voldemort type of issues. Okay, so we're seeing kind of the death of science here. I think the main point of this rant is to say, when you look at nutritional headlines, know that almost 99% of them are coming from observational data, and they're running with it like it's causal. If you want to do time-restricted eating, or you want to do intermittent fasting, it's not one size fits all. It works real well for some people. Some people that are hugely stressed, getting poor sleep, sometimes it's a little too much stress to put on them. Whatever works for you, we do know that caloric restriction does help. Sometimes that is a good, convenient way for people to be able to do that, as long as you focus on food quality and stuff. And then how it fits into jiu-jitsu, you got to be real careful with some of that stuff with your training and stuff. So anyway, we go in that later. But
I mean, it almost becomes, bringing that to the jiu-jitsu world, is your quality of food. If you're someone that's training even a halfway decent amount, and you're doing these like an intermittent fasting or time restricted eating, like your quality food's gonna even more so have to be on point.
Gotta be.
Like, I've experimented obviously with both, as we've talked about a bunch of times. That was a huge thing that helped me through your direction to go from 230 pounds to 175 as my average weight, and
you're maintaining it.
As my maintenance weight. And at first it wasn't quality foods that I was putting in. I was still drinking alcohol a lot, and then I would, if I trained during the daytime, I would then, there's my window, right? I wouldn't eat anything until my daytime training at 11, and then do class, and then I would go to McDonald's or whatever I could. And that got me to a certain point, but that's because I was training so much.
That's right.
But metabolically, as some people that have been following the podcast know, I have gut issues now and a whole bunch of shit.
The inflammatory component.
Right.
That's right.
So even though I was looking visually
better
body comp, metabolically, I was actually not doing super good. And then once I started cleaning all that up and actually using quality foods and quality refuels and feeding and stuff like that, metabolically, I'm sitting much better.
But it was a process for you, and I think having that little transition period, it's not the end of the world, right? Because you're still making some positive changes, right? I guess the reason why I'm bringing all this stuff up is, how many times have you heard me get asked, not to mention you as well, about nutrition stuff?
I mean, it's literally
all the time.
Yes.
Right?
And
so that's why I think it's valuable for us to talk about. We've talked about this before, about nutrient timing and all that kind of stuff in previous podcasts. But again,
so the thing that really stuck out to me there was, like 99% of these headlines that we're seeing on some sort of health study, chocolate's bad for you, chocolate causes cancer, chocolate ups your testosterone, whatever it is. These are typically observational studies.
They are. And because the reason why you can't do physics experiments are very tightly controlled. Okay. To do a no kidding randomized controlled trial with to that level, you'd need to put people on what's called a metabolic ward. You need to sequester. First of all, then you'd have to have a large enough group to have the study have adequate power to even say anything, right? You have to have a larger group. That's called study power. Because you can have, if I just studied 10 people, that's not enough sample size to make, even if it is a nice, well-done study. Now, it's better than observational studies, but it's still not enough to have.
When you say a nice done study, that means a lot of quality
control. In other words, I put you guys sequestered away. I monitored every damn thing that goes in your mouth. Not you, me as a researcher.
Right.
I've monitored all your physical activity. All these variables are all monitored in a sequestered environment.
Controlled, monitored.
The amount of cost to do that was, and logistically, it's almost impossible, right?
Right.
So that's why we've fallen into this observational thing. And I'm not saying observational studies are worthless. Like I said,
Right.
you know, we can use them for hypothesis forming, but then we need to look, does that even make sense?
They're like a really good high funnel, just directional piece that can kind of steer you in a direction that might end up being a dead end, but it also might be something.
But sure. And something like this, though, when we already do have some data on some molecular mechanisms through fasting and all that, and some biomarker studies and things like that, in smaller sample sizes, of course, that totally contradict this finding, they should have been like, this doesn't make really much sense. You know, then you've got to look at all the confounders in your study design, the whole thing. And observational studies are just kind of a setup for problems anyway. So hopefully that's helpful for people.
I think it's tremendously helpful. Is there anything that you would recommend for when these articles come out? Because inevitably we're going to have our family reaching out to us, or friends. Hey, you see this, blah, blah, blah. Whether it's this study or other ones. Any recommendation on how to handle those, or a place to like cross-reference and be like, this came out, okay, I'm going to go here to see what they say?
Well, actually, don't be afraid to pull up the article. You don't have to understand everything. Go to the methods section and look to see how the data was collected. Right? If it says food questionnaire or activity questionnaire,
because that's typically, it will say that.
It has to.
Okay.
Yeah, they have to publish their methods on how they got their data. Right? So
that right there is
by
just
definition, without knowing any statistical analysis, which are also some giveaways, whether it's observational or not.
Yeah.
But that away go to the methods section. Don't look at the damn abstract. You know, it's going to say, you know, I've seen stuff where the abstract has a conclusion. I look through the paper. I'm like, how the hell did they even get that conclusion, right?
Yeah.
How this passed peer review? We're having a big crisis right now in the scientific community for a variety of reasons.
Right.
But yeah, go to the methods section and look at the data collection.
Yeah.
And that if it looks like a questionnaire type of thing, you know it's an observational study.
And I'd say, you know, for especially our listeners, like obviously we like to answer your questions. If you guys see something, send it to us.
Yep.
We'll chew on it and kind of go from there. Chris, like we sent this to Chris when it started kind of jumping around last week. He had already seen it, but we said, let's talk about it. So Chris spends his own time to dig in a little deeper than he already did, and
well,
you know, we're willing to.
You guys, I'm not trying to give my resume here, but
come on.
One of the things I studied, you know, my specialty is a preventive medicine specialty, and part of my specialty training, I had to get a master's in public health. A big part of that is formal training in epidemiology, biostatistics, all these type of things, and we used to go to journal clubs and take papers and try to rip them apart.
Yeah.
That's what we did during training, right?
Yeah.
We'd have that weekly journal club where we'd take a paper, by the way, that was peer-reviewed and published,
right?
And we'd still say, what are the problems with this
Yeah.
paper? So,
and where'd you go to school?
Went to Johns Hopkins.
I mean, I've heard of it.
Yeah. But
just making sure it wasn't Edmonds Community College.
No, it's one of the best public health schools in the world, right? But it's not because that in itself is cool. It's just the opportunities and people there. It was a very good educational environment.
Sure.
Yeah,
and the only reason I pump you up like that and make your butthole loose is because I want like people to understand that like there's a lot of, and I'm not throwing shade at anybody in particular, but there are a lot of people online that actually have even good opinions, but maybe they were formally trained as a chiropractor, got their PhD or master's as a chiro or something, and then they've come down this health and wellness path that has landed in the same place that we are.
Yeah.
But there's something that can be had by having a formally trained person that's with your background. And
it's helpful, but let's not do the appeal to authority either.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So
Exactly.
because I know just since you used that example, I know some people I've trained with at FRS that are brilliant, and they happen to be chiropractors.
Right.
And I know some
it's
people.
not a shade thing.
Sure, and I know, like, if you look at Derek from More Plates, More Dates,
Sure.
very, very well versed in hormones and all that stuff. So it's not an appeal to authority.
And not even like a formally educated
Absolutely. And there's some super smart people out there. I'm just saying that.
And vice versa.
Vice versa, there are people that have the credential that can't think their way out of a paper bag and publish bullshit like this.
And they're professors
they've made livings out of this, dude. So, yeah. So just keep that in mind, guys.
No, I think it's going to be super helpful. I think it's super good. With that, I'm going to switch gears. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk a little jiu-jitsu topic here.
Cool.
So we have a guy we had talked about before, Carson. He's a jiu-jitsu YouTuber. I did a round with him.
Oh, yes. I do remember you discussing this. Was this the controversial, the sneaky black belt?
Exposed black belt.
Exposed black belt?
Caught cheating.
I love it.
That's me.
That's you. I believe it, by the way.
So he went to a JT Torres seminar. And he got to roll with JT, and he filmed it, and JT was cool about it.
Awesome.
He put it out there. Now Carson has he has rolling commentaries, and he has a comedic value to him. He has commentary, and there's some quality technical pieces, but then he throws in little jokes. Okay,
I like it.
Some people got their buttholes in a twist. Okay,
well, they must not like you then. The same people, because you have the same type of thing.
They probably do not.
Okay.
And in the video, he talked about how when he was starting the round, he was mentally preparing himself that he can beat JT Torres in his mind. He wanted to at least have in his mind, like, you know what, I'm gonna go after him, and I'm gonna try to get him. Okay. Mm-hmm. So someone responded to that comment, because that was part of the audio in his YouTube video, and we'll link the YouTube Carson's YouTube video so you can watch that commentary. We'll put that in here. But someone responded to it and said, quote, "I don't know, man, maybe I'm an asshole, but I think it's more disrespectful to actually think you can submit JT. What's respectful is being confident he's gonna F you up, but learning in the process."
So the first sentence, he may be an asshole. You probably are.
Yes.
You probably are. So I remember something that Pedro Sauer said.
Okay.
One of my favorites to listen to.
Yeah.
He says, look, man, he goes, don't look at the belt. This is a person with 4 limbs. Mechanics are mechanics. Go into it and use your best approach here, because there is something that gets into your head. Oh shit, it's JT Torres, and probably right, because he's one of the best in the world.
Yeah.
But there's nothing wrong with going in there and saying, hey, he's just another human, blah, blah, even though we probably know what the outcome's going to be. But I have no problem with that. It's not like he's saying, JT, I'm going to kick your ass type of thing. You know what I mean?
He did say that in the video.
Yeah, but
in jest.
In jest, of course. So freaking lighten the F up.
Yeah.
So anyway.
So Carson actually responded with, quote, "To think that there is no way to submit or win a position on your opponent is genuinely the worst mentality you can have."
That's my...
Yeah. "I used to think that way, but my perspective now is that everyone in jiu-jitsu is a complicated problem. All you have to do is find a way to solve it given the obstacles they present to you. JT can be submitted. I just have to figure out how to do that." And he put, "And I did not, LOL."
Right.
But to shut down the idea that there's a path to victory only means you'll achieve nothing.
That's
You're basically losing from the get-go.
Good job, Carson.
Yeah.
I really like that reply. These guys out there, there's nothing wrong with what he said, and I was just that exactly exemplifies what Pedro Sauer was saying.
Yeah.
Don't let that get in your head, because you'll do worse.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not saying it doesn't mean you're going to win. It doesn't mean like I can go and manifest reality.
Sure.
Yeah, but you'll probably do a lot better if you go into it very objective.
Yeah, he had a little earmark here on his when he posted on Instagram. He said, "Call it ego or delusion, but if you want to be good, you definitely should not go in with the goal of getting effed up. Acknowledge that it will probably happen, sure, but be delusional enough to try and figure out how to solve the problem."
It's not delusional. It's not delusional at all. I know what he's saying.
Well, he's saying quote unquote delusional.
I know delusional.
Like,
yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
But I just want to emphasize, no, that guy's an a-hole.
I think
So
how do you, so there's for sure going to be people, maybe even in your own gym, maybe at other gyms, whatever. Maybe they have credentials. Maybe they got your number. How do you mentally, when you go into one of those rounds with one of those people, and this is even for a competitor that has lost like 3 times to the same freaking guy or something like that, how would you mentally prepare yourself for that?
perfect example. There's a bunch that are, I'm just singling one guy
Sure.
out.
Okay.
One of our second-degree black belts, just athletic freak.
Yeah.
He has probably done more for my jiu-jitsu as far as altering my behavior.
Okay.
For the longest time, every time I'd go roll with him, the dude would loop choke me like 3 times.
Oh, jeez. Yeah.
Because I have a head forward pressure passing
Style. Yeah.
Until he didn't, until I was like, and he made me, I go through, I'm like, okay, here's what I'm going with this roll. This is what happened before. I'm really going to avoid that. That to me is progress for me, because now I have a problem that I'm trying to solve. I may not win or may not even get a good position, but I'm not going to let that happen.
So you're shrinking the,
as you always say,
perspective of the roll down to like, I'm just not going to get caught
in this,
with that.
Because this was a mistake I've been made, or I've been dangling my foot out. Or every time I get into 50-50, there's a certain damn foot lock he gets me in like really quick. And that has made me more self-aware, and it's translated into my other roles. Whether or not I ever beat him, which is doubtful. I'm getting older, and but I don't go into it like that. I go into it like, here's my problem. Here's what he did to me last time. I'm really going to try to avoid that and try to, let me try something else, because what I'm doing right now is not working on this certain person. So, no, it's very valuable.
And I think Carson actually had a similar thing when you listen to his commentary in the roll, where, I mean, he didn't even get into a submission position, but when he put JT in headquarters, Carson's been working on this like diving kind of buzzsaw knee cut style, like Andrew Wiltsey style.
I was going to say, like the Daisy Fresh stuff.
Yeah. And he was just like, I've been working on it. I'm going to try to hit him with it. And he full send. He went for it.
Yep.
Wasn't successful, but if he had in his mind that JT's he's just gonna sweep me from there,
I'm not even gonna try. Yeah.
Your hesitation, you're gonna be slow. You're gonna, and you definitely won't be successful because you're not even gonna shoot. And shooters shoot.
I love it.
I'm saying?
I did, yeah, and I don't think from what you described, of course, I didn't see the exchange or the video where he described, he wasn't being disrespectful at all.
Oh no!
And so
I think
the problem is, Carson, stop reading the damn comments, dude.
Well, he wants engagement, so he's.
I get it, but geez, maybe I'm just old and grouchy, man. I have the Gran Torino type of thing. I'm just like F them.
Yeah, and I would say, kind of to piggyback what you were saying about that comment is like the shutting your like the whole like you're not disrespecting the person like by thinking you have a chance. That's not disrespectful. Like it doesn't even seem logical to me. Now this is coming from someone that I even mess with my own head where I'll think sometimes I don't have a chance.
Right.
And I know that has hindered me with my roles with the people that like you're talking about that are in the gym that I have a really tough time with.
Yep.
If I go into it and I'm like, sure, I'll just get my ass kicked. Then I get my ass kicked.
For sure.
But then
then you didn't learn anything either.
Nothing. I was just like not even good defense. Like what you were talking about, how you went into it like I'm just not going to get loop choked. Well, now you're going to focus on applying quality defense of one, not even getting in the position, but two, if you did get caught in the position, you're intelligently, because you did some studying probably, some intelligent defense out of the loop choke.
Correct.
If I'm going in with this woe is me mentality, then I I'm just pure defense, but not even intelligently defense.
Well, and Andrew has talked about this before in class. He's talking about, getting that mental game where you've psyched yourself out before you've even gone in there and looking at a guy. He's like, look, man, it's a person.
Yeah.
Okay. The anatomy and, the whole thing. And just you apply your jiu-jitsu the best you can, and you'll do much better.
Andrew's been talking to me a lot about this lately because I've been, this tournament, for some reason, I'm having a lot of mental doubts, and I'm really struggling mentally.
Yeah, but you got some other stuff going on, though.
Yeah, and
we haven't talked about, but I mean, Yeah, so I get it.
And it's just, for some reason, like, this has been one of the hardest lead-ups for me, like even more so than my black belt debut, which was against a second-degree pro MMA fighter.
Totally,
like,
dude.
You can look at that and be like, well, that's scarier.
But let me just ask you, without going into details, you can just say yes or no. Are you still in the same bracket you were signed up for?
Yes, but I'll be changing.
Okay. I was going to say, but the only reason I was bringing it up is because
it's an extra set of pressure.
It is, and it's out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, I was 2 weight classes up. There was reasons there, but I'll be switching, which still, like, I'm still having some nerves up, even though I know I'm going to switch, but it's been like really hard to deal with. And but Andrew's been talking to me about it a bit, and it's like, these are just they're normal people. They might look gnarly. They might have, gnarly ears and weathered faces.
But it's jiu-jitsu math, dude.
Yeah.
You can't predict it.
Right.
Where, you can see someone mop the floor of someone.
Yeah.
And then you do pretty well, but then that other person that,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It's just, you never know.
Exactly. And on that, I have been starting to formally train judo at the Washington Judo Academy. And there's a former international competitor there, Coach Nick. He's the one of the main coaches.
Is that who I met on Saturday?
Yeah. And he's been on the same team as Caleb Patterson.
Nice.
His coach was Jimmy Pedro and Jay Flo's teammates.
Yeah.
D1 wrestler as well.
Nice.
Anyways, great pedigree.
Yeah.
International competition level judo experience, right? And something he said, I know this, I've heard this, but it really, I'm trying to remind myself. And he was talking about how him or his teammates or his students now, they'll look at their brackets, then they'll click on the names, and then they'll go and find them on Instagram. Guilty.
Oh, I know you're guilty.
Guilty.
I know.
And his coach would say this to him, and he repeated this recently, is, why? Why? What's it going to matter? What's going to change if you look at that guy, right? And you're not going to there's not going to be match study. We're all hobbyists, right? Or recreational or whatever. It's rare that you're going to find like a bunch of video to be able to okay, I'm going to match study this. The most disrespectful man in the room.
Oh, that's not mine. That's my iPad. I'm so sorry.
You don't even know how to turn it off, do you?
No, I've never answered a phone on my iPad. Sorry.
It's okay. We'll let that ring out.
Sorry. Yeah, it's annoying as hell.
He just said, why? What's going to change if you know who it is or if you don't? Now, I do get to the point where if maybe you're going to go to a tournament and there is a bunch of video and you can kind of, your first round or something, it's like kind of predictable and you're like, there is some video. Okay, I can go study this guy.
See what kind of game he plays. Sure.
See the benefit of that. Absolutely. But at our local freaking tournament, focus on you, what you're going to do.
That's a great point because you want to impose your game anyway.
Yes.
Right? Instead of being reactive to what he's going to do.
Yeah, they're good at spider guard, so I need to only do my passing that defeats spider. No, how about you get into your A game?
Exactly. I think that's great advice. I really do.
And it was one of those things that I was just like, because I'm just very guilty about going into the brackets. I'll go in and watch his family eat dinner. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
I stole that from Theo Von, but the like I will literally like research them as much as I can. So, but I don't think it's necessary. Unless, like I said, maybe a bigger competition, Master Worlds,
sure,
something like that.
Sure.
Like you're going to see the 3 guys on the podium for the last 4 years. So it's like, well, maybe I can look at a little bit of their
Or maybe
stuff.
you won't if USADA's there.
Yeah. Ew. Well, USADA is not even allowed in the building at that place.
I know.
Oh my gosh.
It'd be probably like watching an atheist walk into a Catholic church.
Yeah, I mean, they just set fires immediately. Holy smokes! Oh man. So yeah, I thought that was pretty.
No,
good.
I think it's very useful. It's excellent. Yeah.
Just to change gears again.
Oh, hold on. I have some 2 cents I'd like to put
please,
You
my
guys
lovely
just-
bride.
Okay, so what I was going to say is, 1, I've been talking to you because I have a book called the Championship's Mind, or The Mind of a Champion.
Right. Really good book. I don't read it. Olivia does, and she tells me stuff about it.
But one of those things is mentality. Like they go really into like mentality, but how you have 2 wolves in you, a good wolf and a bad wolf, and you should feed the good wolf.
Yeah. There's
Meaning-
another meme about that. It's like you have 2 wolves in you. One's like a badass and one's gay or something like that.
Okay.
How dare you?
But
It's a meme. I didn't make it.
How dare you?
yeah, so basically, yeah, like, and that there really is proof that your mentality going into something and how you talk to yourself affects your performance. So it's not just like
Self-talk is
It's
legit.
You can talk to my daughter, bring her on again, talk to her
Yeah.
about her inner bully.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Self-talk is, which I'm trying to practice right now, positive self-talk. It is such a freaking game changer.
And then the second thing is the guy saying that, like, oh, that's disrespectful to JT Torres. Does he not think that JT Torres, when he was a purple belt, wasn't saying the same stuff in his head when he was going against black belts?
Right.
Why do you think he's a champion?
Right.
He had a mentality of, like, you know, nobody's, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
Totally.
there's always a chance.
Absolutely.
Top level competitors in any sport
Yep.
have very short memories. Take golfers, for example, because that's like a really easy example, because they have their first tee shot, right, off the tee box. It goes into the woods. They have to forget about that shot as they hit their next one.
Yeah. Otherwise, it just
Otherwise,
compounds
it's like,
itself.
oh, damn,
Almost like a-
here I go, and I shank another one.
Yeah.
Now they're in a whirlpool of shite, of like
Then
negative
they won't
thought.
dig themselves out.
Yeah, they have to forget about it, focus on the shot at hand,
Yeah.
get it in the fairway, and now forget about that stuff, and now hit a good clean
Yeah,
shot.
let's say you lock up with someone just as your match starts and they take you down.
Yeah.
So you're in the whole 2 points. You don't want to just like, oh well, I guess I'm done now.
No, and like
Yeah. Then your guard gets passed and
you're beating yourself up while the guy's like just sitting in your close guard.
totally.
It's like,
exactly.
yeah,
That's a great point, Olivia.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Who wrote that book?
Oh, I don't know.
Maybe if you Google it.
Yeah.
But,
That'd be a good one.
It is a good book. Championship
Aurelius
mindset.
recommended it to me.
Oh, that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. Quick TRT question.
Okay.
And I didn't think we need to wait for Carrie for this one.
All right.
From a very avid listener.
So even my dumb ass can maybe pull it out, right?
No, I'm going to answer it.
Okay. Awesome.
He says, "Is it true that once you pop, you can't stop?" Little rhyme in there for you. Meaning, if I start TRT and I'm starting to feel good and all seems fine, he's a rocket. I can't get off it, wean myself off it even, or I'm stuck doing it forever.
Okay, hold on a second.
No.
Why are you on it in the first place?
Well, we're anticipating. So this is the 34-year-old that tested at like 150. Let's just take all that out. Let's just say he's got all the symptoms. He's low count, all that kind of stuff. He's on it appropriately, let's say.
Yep.
Okay. Well, we're just going to put that out there. He's being administered appropriately. His main question is, I can't get off it. I can't wean myself off. I'm stuck.
Sure you can, but I'm not understanding mentality then. So if we are assuming that he has, primary hypogonadism, which is basically he's just not going to produce anymore.
Yeah.
That's where he's at.
Variety of
reasons.
Yeah.
That's very young.
Yeah.
But let's just say that's the case. When you come off of it, you're still not going to be producing.
Yeah.
So,
it's not rejuvenating your boys.
No.
It's actually
matter of fact, it can have the opposite effect because you're getting exogenous. Now, you can come off of it. And Carrie can talk about ways that she does, like, for instance, let's say, if you want to try to have children, or because it will definitely affect your fertility, there are ways to come off of it. And Carrie can kind of come over that.
Which I'm sure we'll talk about when she comes on.
But my point is, though, then you're back to where you were.
Yeah.
So you're replacing something that you've lost for some reason.
Yeah, it's not a rehabilitation.
No.
It's
replacement.
And if anything, this is why we have the stereotypical things that bodybuilders have of shrinkage of the gonads and all that kind of stuff, is it's shutting down natural and replacing.
Yeah, but again, that's pathologic in that they're using super physiologic doses of steroids.
Yes.
And
I'm not saying that would happen to a TRT user.
Yeah, but my point is, many of those folks, before they went on their anabolics, likely had normal testosterone function.
Right.
Right. So yes, if you want to, assuming that you've lost it for good, I don't know that, but assuming that it is something that's going on where you're just not going to ever produce it to the levels you need to anymore, then if you're replacing, it doesn't. It's not going to come back. Assuming that, I mean. I'd have to you'd have to get a full workup done and see what the problem is.
Yeah, what's your starting point? All that. For example, just from my own personal experience, because I've been on and off for
which was not good
over 10 years,
by the way.
Right, and the coming off and the amount of time that it can take for your body to, let's say your symptoms aren't crazy. Somehow you got on TRT, but your symptoms weren't all that crazy. Your count wasn't even that low, like all the hormone stuff. But for some reason you went on it. Maybe just to see, be like, oh, how much better do I feel when I'm at 800 rather than 400? Something like that.
Okay.
The time not in all cases, everyone's different, but the time it can take for when you get off it to get your body for a while or a period of time is going to be in the dirt.
Yeah, and you can use things like Clomid and things like that.
Absolutely, to kind of help kickstart that engine a little bit.
Yeah, restart the luteinizing hormone and stuff like that. But yeah, you're exactly right. But then you're going to rebound to where you were previously.
Right.
Yeah.
And so if that rebound timeline, I've had a couple months to damn near a year. Yeah,
that's why you shouldn't take, as much as we talk about TRT, this shouldn't be something you do lightly.
Yeah.
Because it absolutely, if you're replacing something, you're replacing something. You're not supplementing.
Yeah, and how Carrie typically talks about it is think of it as a long-term solution. You don't want to have this yo-yo effect on your hormones. We see the same thing when it comes to women and birth control. It's on and off and on and off. Like you're messing with your system
big time.
With
and she'll say the same thing, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But but the big assumption into this specific case is that there is something primary going on where you're just not ever going to produce adequate amounts anymore. So that's a personal decision. Like, okay, when am I done dealing with this poor quality of life and knowing that it's going to be, and if you do get off, which you can, it's going to go back to where you were, if not worse.
Yep.
Because the natural progression over time.
and I will say, like, when I've gone to other clinics, like the testosterone clinics or the urologists or something like that, they're not very. They're just like, hey, you can go on, you can go off. Like they're very lazy about how they talk about it, which is, I have a feeling maybe where this question is coming from.
They don't care.
Yeah. So that's the way to think about it, in my opinion, for sure. spinal question that we have. Tell me if we push this to the next app. But it's a little bit of a doozy. We have someone that actually got into a car accident, and it was fairly severe from the sound of it. So I'm just going to read the question. Cut me off when you want. But here we go. What are Dr. Hardy's thoughts on treatment, rehab, and progression back to jiu-jitsu from a car accident that resulted in a C2 fracture, type 3 odontoid fracture?
Okay. This is a catastrophic injury.
Oh.
It can be.
Okay.
Okay. The C2, the odontoid. So in layman's terms, and we still use it in anatomy, we have the atlas, which is C1, and the axis. The C1 is what the skull sits on top of.
So we're at the top here.
Okay. C2 has this appendage sticking up through the base of where C1 articulates to. It's called the odontoid. If you fracture that all the way through and C1 slips on C2, like moves, severing the spinal cord, you're dead. Period. Anything above like the C3, C4 and all that, and C5 technically, innervates the diaphragm, allows you to breathe. So if you're above that, you no longer can breathe, much less all the other things going on.
This guy literally almost died.
Yes. So that is a scary fracture. So we're normally, I'm not even going to go any further. Where normally I would say, let's say I broke my arm or, rotator cuff tear or whatever, where we can be a little more laissez-faire with, returning to training and here you can do these things and this thing. The risk benefit until that odontoid is solid, right, can be catastrophic if it fails, right? As far as returning to jiu-jitsu.
It's a weak point.
Dude, well, and that's where you can get your spinal cord severed.
Yeah.
So this isn't something to mess around with. I'll just say, just with that, you need to ensure you're following up with a neurosurgeon, spine surgeon, to ensure before you return to anything that stresses the neck, that area is solid and is not in danger of failing.
Like the bone is fully healed.
Yeah. And if it's not surgically repaired, if we're just trying to immobilize it and hoping it heals right, this is not something that Chris is, I'm using myself in the third person here, is going to say, well, you can kind of take it easy. No. The
like the normal
the normal where I'm like, the
literature says,
I got a herniated disc down at L4 that's, causing some, anterior leg pain or thigh pain. We can kind of play around with that a little bit.
Work on it while we still do jiu-jitsu.
Right. That's not the spinal cord, right? And especially at that level, the spinal cord. I would say you're lucky to be alive. A little more and you would not be. It's an instant death, basically. And I'm not trying to be hyperbolic here. I mean it. So you need to be, you need to follow up with whoever's following you. Hopefully it's a spine surgeon, neurosurgeon.
Don't you know someone that's a good
I do, in the area,
in Bellevue?
No, I know someone in Everett.
Who?
Dr. Anisapur. He's fantastic.
Okay.
Yeah.
I remember you've brought this up before.
Yeah, he's actually a U.S. champion, karate champion too. I mean, he's a martial artist himself. A phenomenal shape. He's an athlete, and he's one of the best spine surgeons in our area.
Okay.
And now he'll tell you, I'm sure he would say the same. Like, you do not want to F around with that, dude. So that has to be there's no question about that stability before you do anything that loads the neck. Anything. Can you imagine getting stacked or something like that? It's just, you would be dead. It's not worth it, man.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to play this very conservatively. I don't even need to hear any more than that.
Okay.
Just with that injury.
Let me give you a little bit more.
Okay. All right.
Because he does have a piece in there. He said, I've read the standard treatment is generally 8 to 12 weeks, but I've heard it can be longer too, which sounds kind of like what you're saying is like,
we got to make sure that
go on the longer
yeah,
side.
Yeah, well,
if
we got to
anything.
make sure that has to be demonstrated to be solid again.
Yeah. Any thoughts on time conditions that any thoughts on time or conditions that I should start to be concerned about disunion? Is that this thing that you're talking about now where it's not healing all the way?
Where it's not healing. The problem is if that is unstable.
Yeah. That's what disunion is.
Well, disunion is, in other words, it's called a malunion. The bone is not fusing back together.
Okay.
Like if it's displaced.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Angulated. And I'm not a spine surgeon.
Sure.
But I just
understand.
I know the anatomy.
A little bit of it.
that
you've read a book.
A couple. But that's not something you ever want to mess around with. You're gonna, dude.
I mean, so obviously he's in one of those stiff neck brace things.
Oh, he better be.
He's like, nah.
Which is miserable.
He's actually local to us too.
Oh, okay.
He goes to Electric.
Dude, see Ali and Nissapur.
Yes, because he is local here.
Yeah.
Ali Nissapur.
Ali and Nissapur, yeah.
So he says, also, do you have any thoughts on how to improve his sleep quality and general discomfort from back and neck heat / pressure while in one of those hard collars 24/7? Obviously,
bro.
I assume he can't sleep on his side.
Dude, well, the problem is that thing is so obtrusive, but it has to be, right? I think what I've heard people have the best luck with is one of those little, kind of high-end recliner type of things.
Right.
Where you can kind of get supported, but, kind of laying up where you're not getting a lot of pressure down on your neck.
Yeah.
And I've
yeah, because I imagine if you're laying flat, like that's
there's no way, dude.
You don't want that.
You're basically going to have to be. I know a lot of people use recliners to try to get some kind of comfort.
It's going to be worth the
maybe
for a nicer
dude.
one.
Yeah, and you could. What you would do, honestly, before you can invest in it, go to those furniture stores and lay back in one for a while.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, I'm just
guys,
test driving it, bro.
Just letting you know, I'm going to be here for a little bit.
Yeah, and just see how that feels. But some of my patients have had neck surgeries. Nothing. I mean, that have been immobilized. They typically have the best luck as far as getting any kind of sleep. It's still not going to be great.
Yeah.
With a good quality recliner that's supportive. Yeah.
I mean, that leads me to start thinking about, like, you're even more so going to have to be sharp on. You can go back to our sleep episode on some of your sleep regimen stuff. Blue light restriction.
Yep.
Food, caffeine intake.
All that stuff.
Screen time. Because you're going to need to have everything you possibly can to promote sleep. One, to help you heal.
Yep.
But just for comfort and energy, because you're already going to have trouble sleeping because of the position.
Oh, yeah. You don't want to have any other. You want to have everything else, like you're saying, dialed in.
Yeah. And last thing he had was, is there any other treatments to help bone health, like stem cells, hot cold therapy, CBD, etc.? Yeah.
So I think, but in that area, I mean, you could consider some peptides like BPC 157.
Sure.
Some like local, not into the spine, but even local injections of that. You could, in general, it helps with bone, giving it its building blocks, like some collagen powder supplementation with vitamin C. Vitamin C is necessary in building new collagen. That can help. Dude, what I would do, if you're not already with a good one, make sure you have yourself a really good spine surgeon. I would think you would at least have been consulted, probably in the ER with a spine surgeon. They probably had one on call when they had the initial fracture.
Sure.
But if you're local, I can't say enough good things about Dr. Nissapur. He's at Western Washington Medical Group.
Okay.
I'm putting him on blast on a podcast, but I think he's awesome.
But it's in a good way. I'm sure.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Okay. Yeah, that's unfortunate. Happy you're not dead.
Dude, man, I feel so bad for you, man, but just don't F around with that, man. That is nothing that you want to take lightly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty severe.
Yeah.
Well, guys, we thank you for all the questions that come in. Like I said, if you have anything that is like this article, you see some BS out there on Twitter or Instagram or something like that, feel free to send it to us and be like, hey, is this legit?
Yeah.
My mom says I'm eating too much red meat.
That's a good tee that one up.
Yeah.
And remember, we're trying to get Carrie on here soon for some more TRT stuff.
Yeah, we got a few TRT questions that have already come in, and we're banking those. Keep them coming. We'll have a nice big episode on all that.
Cool.
Thanks, y'all.
Later.